With grouping finally a big deal in ranked, I've been able to find groups that I can play with on my 2 accounts, one in Masters, one with Diamond Friends, to go for plays and tactics that the mainstream Overwatch player seemingly thinks are bad, but are completely misguided about. Rein Zarya is the most exploitable tank combination in the game. For playing in the past week in groups, I'm holding something like a 75% win rate. Seems like both my accounts are going to be ranking up, and honestly, a big percentage of it is just farming the misconceptions that people have about what the best comps are to run. Rein Zarya being the biggest offender. So I will elaborate on this, but I am a little bit confused on how seemingly the entire community collectively forgot the principles of how dive works, but let's go over them yet again. The way to beat Rein Zarya can be summed up in one simple sentence: avoid tanks, dive, squishies. That's it. And when you combine that with the extra component on where you want to fight, you're going to outright destroy these Rein Zarya compositions. The first step is to allow the Rein Zarya space. Because they're a brawling tank duo, they're allowed to go wherever they want. And what you do as the dive team, in order to hard counter that, is to wait for them to get into a spot where you can split them off from their team, ignore them, and send your mobility at their backline, to which the Rein Zarya duo can do nothing to stop. Now, I think the reason why in ranked this hasn't been a popular thing to do, because it actually does require some discipline of the team. Your tanks cannot be taking damage early in fights. They need to hide and avoid damage, which, despite me saying that's how the pros play, plenty of matchmaking players still thinks that if you're a tank character, your job is to take damage. No, stop. If you're a tank character, it is not your job to take damage. It is your job to command space. Very different. If your team takes less damage than the enemy team takes, they lose. So you don't want to purposefully be taking damage. That is just feeding. We got a few examples of this, but first example is going to be a Pharah counter-engage defense using dive to exploit the immobility of these Rein Zarya comps. The good thing about this perspective is that we actually can see the entire enemy team and where we ideally want to pick our engagement. That is where the skill of this actually is. It isn't simply fighting squishies, it's finding how to isolate them when they're away from their tanks. I mean, here, the enemy makes this just too easy for me, don't they? Not only does the Rein Zarya not protect them from my damage hovering above them anyway, they split off themselves. Not knowing where I am, of course, this is the first fight, so they just instantly lose, because with my Winston, we're able to just focus squishies who thought they were just going to get the objective for free. Okay, well, it can't always be that simple, Frito. What do they do once they know you have a Pharah in the sky? Well, ideally, the enemy had to either go Diva, probably, or at least a Widowmaker, but they think a McCree is going to be enough. Spoiler alert, he's not, because I'm able to try to keep my team a bit more disciplined to wait for the squishies to be away from the tanks. Our Winston mistimes it a little bit here. You see how they're still quite clumped up. They can easily turn on him. That's no good. But our Dragon Blade gets into position to carve up the backline. Not a good boot from me. I almost messed up the Dragon Blade there. But overall, you can see the Rein Zarya combo pushes, it doesn't peel. Diva is the best peel tank, but also can be played aggressively as well. Zarya just brawls, and mobility avoids brawls. And that's why mobility characters counter Rein Zarya. Even on this next clip, when my Genji attempts to harass the backline, gets himself picked off, the enemy thinks, oh, we have a pick, right? That just means we win. Nope, man advantage doesn't matter if the resources and positioning aren't in your favor. We're able to do this because the enemy thinks the objective is their goal. It's not. Killing the defense is the attacking team's goal. Because if you don't, you can't just go stand on point and hope you're gonna cap it, you'll eventually die. But we'll elaborate on that point as we move through this video. Let's now show you how this looks from a tank's point of view. We'll show you one of 2 separate teams. Let's say Team A takes the high ground, and Team B thinks that fighting on cart is the way to win the game. Well, the defense here tries to launch up Graviton Strike, but they seem to forget that it doesn't go through trance with damage amp, it only equalizes it. They needed extra damage in order to follow up on that, and well, all their players are on the low ground, so after the grav, we shake it off, have high ground advantage from there, and they lose this fight instantly. Oddly enough, they didn't learn from our attack, and when they found themselves in the same position as us, they decidingly stayed on the cart forever on the low ground. So many teams do this. Guys, this is the top 3%. This is supposed to be a very high rank. You can steal the SR of these players that don't know what they're doing. Look at how I, as D.Va, am constantly looking to deal damage but avoid sightlines. By doing this and weaving in and off on the cart, we're able to stall the cart, find the right targets, engage on them, and thin out this attack over and over again. Your objective in Overwatch isn't to push the objective. You need to win team fights so you actually can push the objective. And the only time that these Rein Zarya brawl comps on the cart work is when the enemy team also does it, and you both fight to see who can get more grabs off than the other. There is no point for this attacking team to send tanking resources to the cart that they can't make progress on, while we have not only the McCree on the high ground, but me flanking on the opposite high ground and rotating around, shooting them in the back the entire time, paired with a Genji doing more or less the same thing. Genji McCree, those heroes are terrible in this meta, right? Well, probably we could have had a Hanzo instead of the McCree, but it kind of doesn't matter what DPS you have if your tanks play better than the enemy tanks. Their tanks get 0 value, our tanks do their job, the DPS is able to just spin circles around the enemy, and they get held at a spot that no team really should ever get held in. Let's look at another example of how we're able to use mobility to outposition the Rein Zarya. On Hollywood here, we trade out, get a Genji, but lose our Rein. Normally, lose your Rein, well, it's time to abandon the push. Rein's the most important character. How could we ever get meaningful damage done when they have a shield and we don't? Well, read the positioning here. Rein Zarya on the point. I call to send our Genji into the backline. They have no high ground control, so our Mercy can even come with me. I pull all of their attention towards me, which essentially takes the lid off of the defense, pulls them all back, allows us to just stride onto point. Our Genji is able to find the Zen. The entire defense falls apart. That's the problem with Rein Zarya. They can never reposition. They're way too slow. So if you send mobility to a spot that they can't defend, they're hopeless against it. Here on the last defense, our Genji and I are poking from two opposite sides. We're able to discord and whittle down the Rein and the Zen, forcing him to pop trance. And this is where I get the fish in the barrel comment that I probably say a bit too much, but this is the most ideal situation you can ever get against these Rein Zarya comps. The full version is it's like shooting fish in a barrel, which is like fishing on easy mode, right? The fish aren't moving. There's no sport to it at all. They're stuck in place, and you hanging over them can shoot down on them. Super easy stuff. Let's take a look at another map where high ground gains you a ton of control. Oasis, if you watch pro teams, they always go to the center pillar. Why? Well, it controls most of the map, and you can decide where to go from moment to moment. They even get the first pick off, but I'm able to boop away the enemy in order to clear space for the res. Now they come back, they're in the open. We have all the mobility in the world to just dance around them from either side, poking and prodding, waiting for our damage to find its mark. And most importantly, the thing I think people forget about is that Zenyatta, with his damage amplification, gets more value when your teammates have mobility because they're able to reposition to just get reliable damage on the target of that character who's marked for death. Whereas these slow brawling comps have to focus the front line. Rein Zarya can't go off and get a squishy or target a specific thing. They only can target the things that are in range for them, and that's always going to be the enemy's front line or whatever's immobile on the ground in front of them. And I know I have already covered this in the past, but people still tell me that D.Va feeds Zarya. I did an entire video about this. A lot of people said that it was common sense, but I'll tell you this, sense isn't common. Believe that. D.Va's pick rate in Season 10 was something like 3%. I don't know what it is anymore because a lot of the stat collection websites aren't working properly with the private profiles, but people seem to forget that mobility avoids damage. You don't need to be able to win a straight up brawl. If you can use mobility to avoid it, manipulate their line of sight, flank, get alternate angles, damage them from multiple locations, and control the battle. I really like this little clip. Knock the Rein in. Jump on in, Rein. The water's fine. We do end up getting sucked into grav, that devastating combo that is uncounterable supposedly, but I'm able to eat the follow-up, nab the Dragon Strike arrow before it connects with us. People keep running this Rein Zarya combo on maps where high ground is important, and it makes no sense. Again, it's the simple shot call.
Rein Zarya comes here. Where they go?
If they Rein Zarya, ignore the tanks. Let them walk wherever they want.
Up top.
Just let them have that.
Okay.
And once they split, we go backline. Now, granted, the Rein Zarya team does have a shield advantage, which at these long-range poke battles, if your squishy characters don't properly avoid that engagement first, they can get picked off because, obviously, we can't really play for shield break in the way that we're playing this. But as long as we remember the principle, of we're avoiding the fight until the Rein Zarya takes space, we always can go into the backline basically for free. Now, a lot of people get nervous about this because oftentimes this requires you to give up more objective than you would like to, but that's just yet another matchmaking misconception that you need to wipe from your brain entirely. Giving up ticks doesn't matter. Just about every single time I hear someone say, don't give up a tick, it's the wrong call. Always give up a tick in favor of winning the team fight and maintaining control. Your dive tanks aren't going to be able to go toe-to-toe on the objective, but they are going to guarantee kills. This is why the pros always run Winston D.Va on these maps, because they play this way. Let's look specifically at this team's last 2 engagements. They're sending McCree onto the low ground. Well, that high noon's not going to get anything with our tanks on the spot to block it anyway. They peel back, we let them stay there. Again, as the team attempts to move up, it wants to take space, you always can harass into the backline. Now, I would say this is almost slightly a bit too early from our Genji, but I am there to catch the flashbang in order to help pocket him, try to catch some of the damage from the Zen and the Ana. Defense Matrix pocketing on Dragon Blade is not utilized enough, I'd say, but with just one ultimate and a coordinated backline engage, this whole team just falls apart. You might say to yourself, well, the Rein Zarya comp has much better ultimates of their own, right? Well, look at this. They push their way onto point with Transcendence. I see that, so I say, oh, well, you just get a little space for now, fly away, come back in a few seconds when they actually can take damage, and we just find the backline for free. Primal Ray just stomping and rampaging their way through the squishy backline. It kind of just blows my mind. This is a Diamond Winston player I got on my team. This guy's playing better than any Masters player I've ever seen. It's really silly how inaccurate the ranking system works, but don't get me started on that. And as I've covered on my previous video talking about D.Va, what do they even grav here anyway? How do they even follow up on a grav meaningfully? That's the problem with grav against dive tanks. Your whole team's playing split up anyway, so Grav is going to maybe get 1 or 2 kills. Meanwhile, the backline is dying. They're not even able to pull the trigger on that Grav. Another map, Gibraltar. Tons of high ground. Just like Numbani first, ignore the tank, fight the squishies. We set up to look for the backline. They win the cart now. And we want to give the enemy a bit of time to move, spread out, and attempt to take map control. And that's when we want to come back and steal it back from them. Because here, as the enemy sends a bunch of members to cart, we're able to send all of our mobility up top, clear that up for free. And yes, they do get some free cart push out of this. But if you've been following along, this is actually going to be a full hold. It doesn't matter if they're able to get the cart here. It's only a little bit farther where you normally would get it for free anyway. Guaranteeing the fight win is always your priority in Overwatch, except to the point where they fully win the objective. The only tick that matters is the last one. And if the attacking team is going to make the mistake of overemphasizing the objective when they can't even cap it anyway, let them. Eventually, this enemy team realizes they can't even run Rein Zarya here. It's doing nothing for them. They have to swap to dive tanks as well, but the clock is quite low by that point, so now they don't have the luxury to avoid the objective. They have to play for it, and it's just too late. Now, dive comp definitely has counters, but Rein Zarya is not one of them. Even on maps where Rein Zarya is incredibly strong, pro teams still have run dive tanks against them to succeed if you follow these principles correctly. Now, there are other counters to Rein Zarya. For example, if they don't have Lucio speed boost, oftentimes they're going to struggle against heavy spam compositions with a bunker setup. A lot of people assume you need Roadhog in the off-tank slot with Orisa, but not actually. D.Va is more often than not more powerful, unless Roadhog's just hitting every hook, but if you can't set that up, D.Va is the better choice. And often with the Rein Zarya combo, most people want a lot of healing to keep it up, but the problem is, what you actually need is speed boost to keep your shield up. There's no healing that can heal shields. You don't want to pump a lot of healing into your tank. What you want is to get the most value out of the Rein barrier and Zarya bubbles. So without speed boost, it's incredibly easy to just launch more damage into the mass and hard counter it that way. I would say that Rein Zarya with speed boost counters the spam setup, but a lot of people just don't run Lucio at all. Guys, what did you think of today's video? I assure you, if you're able to get teammates that listen to these calls, you will farm the SR of these teams that are running these suboptimal compositions because some Overwatch Prima strategy guide told them to. There's a lot of players out there that are just reading pick rates rather than reading the game of Overwatch, and you can exploit it to your advantage. I probably should have made this video because I probably would have got both of my accounts ranked up by doing this, but hey, my goals have never been to just grind the ladder, but to have the most fun. And LFG has been a ton of fun. I hope you guys use it to find teammates. And side note, a lot of times people say that they don't find the best kind of teammates with LFG. Don't be afraid to put your battle tag, rank, region, and platform in the comment section down below in any of our videos to try to group up with some Your Overwatch fans to dominate the ladder together and improve. Ideally with LFG, you want to go into it with as many pre-made friends as you can and supplement the other roles that you don't have filled. That's how you're going to see the biggest success with LFG and how you're going to actually be able to set out from the get-go that you're going to run these strategies and who your shot caller is, etc., etc. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, please subscribe because we upload each and every day. So you're going to want to hit the bell icon so that you get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter. We tweet out news, updates, and dank memes. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for Your Overwatch. I'll see you guys next time.